When you're looking for foods at Costco to help with diabetes, you're not just looking for foods that control your blood sugar. You're not just looking for low carbohydrate foods. You're looking for foods that also help rekindle the signal between the pancreas, insulin, and the cell itself. So we're going to talk about foods that improve insulin sensitivity so they can help you out in the long haul, not just in the short term with your blood sugar. Let's go to Costco and see what we got. I genuinely dislike starting off any of these hauls with a supplement or a vitamin because I'm really about whole foods. But one of the things that's kind of interesting that I think is really good for on the go are these apple cider vinegar capsules. Okay, I'm a big fan of apple cider vinegar because when you consume vinegar of any kind, really, not just apple cider vinegar, what it does is it acts as an alpha amylase inhibitor. So if you take this along with carbohydrates, what that means is it slows down the digestion of the carbohydrates a little bit more. Therefore, it makes it so that when you are breaking those down, your glucose spike is a little bit lower. Now, when you're on the go, you can't just be bringing a bunch of apple cider vinegar liquid with you, but you can bring these capsules, which makes it kind of easy. So they're about 18 bucks for an entire bottle of them, which is a pretty good deal considering it's a 2 capsule serving. So you've got 90 servings in here. So great when you're on the go and really does modulate your blood glucose quite a bit. There's a saying that for blood sugar control, you want to, quote, put clothes on your carbs. What that means is when you're having carbohydrates, you want to either add protein or you want to add fat to them. What that does is it slows down the digestion of the carbohydrates, but it's a little bit of a misnomer because if you are already diabetic, you lose sort of the ability to process carbs and fats at the same time effectively. Okay, you end up what's called metabolic gridlock. So when you look at something like this, at first glance, it seems like it's going to be really great because you have fats, you have some carbohydrates from the dates, you have some protein. It's a well-rounded mix, which I have nothing wrong with an RX bar at all. I think in general, it's a very clean, down-to-earth product. But when you're diabetic, we still have a lot of sugar in here, okay? So in this case, we have 23 grams of carbohydrates, and even though it says, 13 grams of sugar, 14 grams of sugar, and there's no added sugars, those carbohydrates are coming from the dates, which are a pretty high glycemic carbohydrate. I just wanted to point this out because it's a perfect example of something that in a simple fashion is a great food, but because of what's called the Randle cycle and because of the ability for our cells to utilize fuel substrates at the same time, or inability, this wouldn't exactly be the best thing. Now, is there a better option for like an on-the-go bar? Yes and no. Okay, I firmly believe that you should be just getting your food from Whole Foods as much as possible. And even though this has more wonky ingredients, what I do like about this is we're starting with protein. We're not adding a bunch of other sugar. We're not adding a bunch of fats to it. So it's relatively low fat, like a 4-gram fat bar. And even though those 22 grams of carbs look like a high amount, 10 grams of it is fiber, only 2 grams of it is sugar. So it's a low glycemic carbohydrate. And then the rest is coming from like erythritol, which is essentially a sugar alcohol, which is not going to impact your blood glucose. Now, all that being said, from a general macro, or should I say wide angle view, actually a good diabetic food. Now, at a micro level, there's some wonky things in there I'm not the biggest fan of. So if you're not like what I would consider someone that is looking at a microscope at the ingredients, I think it's fine. Okay, if you're someone that's trying to eat super clean, yeah, let's find some other stuff. This is something that makes just about every haul that I do. So feel free to skip this section if you've seen it a million times before. But for diabetes, this is one of the best foods that you can eat. Okay, for one, we have iodine, which is very good for the thyroid and kind of rekindling the thyroid to work well. But if you look at the ingredients here, we have seaweed, we do have sunflower oil, which people get upset about, but we have sesame oil, and sesame oil is in a unique category in and of itself because what's unique about it is sesame oil actually helps protect the cell from what is called lipid peroxidation. So you hear people talking about seed oils being a problem, and it's up in the air whether it truly is or not. It really is mixed. So without taking a side there, let's pretend for a second that seed oils are absolutely terrible. They would be terrible because they oxidize and cause issues within the cell membranes. Sesame oil actually protects that. So even though sesame oil is technically a literal seed oil, it protects that. Now, what does this all mean in human terms? The reason I like seaweed is because the beta-glucan fibers help out the gut microbiome, and they aid in the microbiome being able to produce more of these components that help with carb metabolism. So it's not just because it's a low-calorie food. It actually has properties that could help you out with insulin sensitivity. So every time I go to Costco, I buy 1, 2, sometimes 3 packages of these. And you might be thinking, hey, you're an in-shape guy. What do you know about diabetes? I don't want to play this card all the time. It's not something I like to say a lot, but for those of you that don't know me, I was 300 pounds before. I was pre-diabetic before. I've made an entire business out of helping people understand insulin resistance. So I know a thing or two because I've been there. These are kind of interesting. They are a keto product, but for someone that is not even keto, that's trying to just keep cognizant of their blood sugars, this is pretty interesting. We've got first ingredient being coconut. We've got the second ingredient being pumpkin seeds, which are a tremendous source of plant-based protein, probably one of the better plant-based protein sources. Pecans, probably my favorite nut outside of macadamia nuts. Almonds. Now the downside is it does have cane sugar in there. Like, why would you add sugar to something that's supposed to be keto? So if we're looking from a keto perspective, it's irritating that this has sugar in it, 3 grams of added sugars. But if you're looking at it from a pure diabetic snack, it's actually not bad. I'm not going to get it. I don't need this stuff laying around, because what you do need to remember is a 1 ounce serving is still going to have 160 calories. So caloric snack, and one of the best things you can do for diabetes is honestly lose weight. Quick thing you can do if you're diabetic, I'm not going to even grab these, I've got a bunch at home. If you add hemp hearts to your oatmeal, or you add hemp hearts to your protein shake or to your breakfast, great way to lower the glycemic response of a lot of different foods. Just a kind of pro tip there. Okay, so I've got these sprouted organic pumpkin seeds. Cool thing about these, okay, if you are diabetic, not only are you going to have a high source of protein within these, with these, but you're also going to have them in a sprouted form. Okay, what the sprouting does is it breaks down the phytic acid, it breaks down the oxalates. So you hear people talking about, hey, nuts, seeds, vegetables, they have these things called oxalates which damage our gut lining. That's not incorrect. We're not really designed to be eating a lot of them at once, okay? But when they're sprouted, it breaks down those components, making it easier for us to digest and eliminating sort of that issue. So what that means is they soak them in water until they start to sprout, and it breaks down that stuff so that our body can actually utilize them. So really a tremendous source of those fats that might help us out with being satiated. So I'm gonna grab some of these. Fun fact on tomatoes. I'm not gonna get any of these, but I just thought I'd mention, the lycopene in tomatoes is a very, very, very potent antioxidant that has direct effects on the cell when it has to do with insulin signaling. So there's some interesting research on lycopene, specifically it's in tomato paste, diced tomatoes, things like that. Very, very, very helpful. So if you're cooking and you just want to add a little bit of tomato just for fun, you're also getting this added benefit as an antioxidant. So you think antioxidants, what does that have to do with diabetes? Well, when you have oxidative stress, which is essentially waste particles that are floating around, binding to electrons, creating this issue, that directly impacts cell signaling and insulin signaling. The more you clear up the waste, it's like the clearer the path the insulin has to the cell. So fun fact, it's not, a huge impact, but it's something that's definitely not taking you backwards. Okay, so here we have these Madras lentils, okay? Now, the thing I do like about this, the ingredients are water, black lentils, kidney beans, cream, tomato paste, onion, sunflower oil, salt, cumin organic. It signifies organic, dried ginger. The downside is most of the fats that's coming from this is going to be cream and sunflower oil and butter, I guess. I don't have as much of an issue with the cream and the butter. I do have an issue with the sunflower oil. But you see how sunflower oil is further down the list there? Well, then we look at, there's 6 grams of fat in a serving. First we have cream, then we have butter. Okay, they're higher up the list. That means the first highest source of fat is cream, second highest source of fat is butter, third highest source is sunflower oil. So although you might see that on there, we're probably looking at 1 gram of sunflower oil per serving. Okay, and if you're not a freak about everything, then who cares? This is not a huge deal. What I do like about it is it actually has kind of some Mediterranean feel to it. Okay, we've got the lentils, we've got the red beans. Now kidney beans are interesting because kidney beans, when they're not cooked, are actually toxic. And there's a lot of an argument out there, should we be consuming kidney beans? Well, when they're cooked, it changes the game. Lentils, being a nice legume, are part of a Mediterranean staple. Now the Mediterranean diet, or something called Mediterranean Plus, that was published in the journal Nutrients, is demonstrated to be one of the best diets for metabolic syndrome, diabetes, insulin resistance. So I am a big fan of adding lentils in whenever you can. Also a great replacement for rice. So if you like Indian food and you like to do some kinds of like curry and things like that, instead of going for like white sticky rice or regular white rice, whatever, try going for lentils. Just sub it out. You're going to notice a huge difference in your blood sugar. Okay, now this is not the sexiest item in the world, sardines, which I talk about quite frequently. The reason I just want to touch on this really quick is omega-3s are going to make the cell membrane more fluid. So if you have a cell like this and you have the membrane that surrounds the cell, the membrane receives the signal from insulin. Okay, you've got GLUT4 that comes to the surface, but if the membrane is rigid, it's like a brick wall surrounding this cell and nothing can penetrate. But what omega-3s do is they soften the membrane and they make the membrane more gooey and pliable. What that means is a signal can hit the membrane and translate through. It's called cell fluidity or membrane fluidity. And omega-3s have been demonstrated in multiple studies, even larger observational data, to be really, really good at that. Okay, now I got plenty of sardines at home, don't need to get more of those. Point is easy to add omega-3s to your diet. People think it's difficult, but one of the quickest ways is through things like sardines. Okay, this is a really cool find. People think spaghetti sauce and they immediately think spaghetti, they think bad, they think, you know, whatever. Well, let's take a look at this Prego really quick. Okay, $8.49, it's a good deal, but look at that, tomato puree, and then we get into sugar, canola oil. Okay, not only do we have canola oil high up on the list, but we also have sugar. Tomatoes already have sugar in them, we don't need to add sugar. But then we look at this Rouse stuff. Yes, it's more expensive. Okay, but I'm telling you, it is way better. Check this out. Whole peeled tomatoes, olive oil, onions, salt, garlic, basil, black pepper, oregano. No sugar added, nothing in there. You've got the lycopene from the tomatoes, which is really good for insulin sensitivity, but you also have this olive oil. That is called a monounsaturated fat, a Mediterranean fat. Get those in olives, get those in avocados, get those in macadamia nuts. Tremendous at improving insulin signaling. It helps the beta cells in the pancreas produce more insulin themselves, but it also helps the cell receive the signal from insulin much better as well. I go through this stuff like it's going out of style, so I'm going to grab some for sure. And this one's on sale. Let's see what this one's got. Tomatoes, tomato puree, onions, organic extra. Ooh, you know what? I love the taste of the Rouse, but this one's kind of cool. Check that out, $7.89. Man, maybe I'll get both because I want to taste test them. But that's a much better deal.
12 bucks.
2-pack, 25 ounces each for $7.89 versus this was 12 something. All right, we gotta do a test because the ingredients are really good in that too. I'm actually from Sonoma originally too, so kind of cool. Speaking of olive oil, let's do a quick touch here really quick. So we've got organic extra virgin olive oil. We've got 100% Italian extra virgin olive oil. Difference is one's organic. Look at the price difference. Okay, like what's going on? Why is the organic cheaper than the non-organic? Same size, price per liter. I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? So with olive oil, you always want to look for the darker bottle because olive oil goes rancid very easily. Now take a look at this. Compare this to, okay, ideal for frying, cooking, and baking. Look, I mean, a little bit cheaper per liter, but it's in a clear bottle, which means it's going to oxidize. Same thing with this. Okay, you want to get a dark bottle. Now, olive oil, that monounsaturated fat, tremendous for fat loss, tremendous for insulin signaling. And common misnomer, and I used to subscribe to this way of thought too, was that olive oil is not okay for cooking. It actually is okay for cooking as long as you're not cooking at a ridiculously high heat. If you are starting to cook at a high heat, check this out. We get this avocado oil, also in a dark bottle, and it's the same kind of monounsaturated fats. Very similar fat profile as you're going to get in olive oil. Less flavorful, better for high heat cooking. If you're using a fryer, it's great for that. If you're using an air fryer, drizzle your food with it and put it in the air fryer. It's perfect for that. The other thing I like about Marianne's brand, it's one of two, Marianne's and Chosen Foods, that were proven to be pure avocado oil in a recent UC Davis study where over 80% of avocado oils were actually not avocado oil. That's freaky. And it's Halloween on day of filming, so that's about as spooky as it gets, I can tell you that. This is a very good deal on this garlic here. Okay, this is just garlic, water, and citric acid. Citric acid is just acid basically coming from like citrus, like they just derive the acid. It's just a preservative. Don't be afraid of that. This is really cool stuff. So the cool thing about garlic, prebiotic fiber, very, very good for the gut. Very, very good when it comes down to helping you, and in fact, beta glucans, just like we've got in the seaweed over there. Really good for that prebiotic fiber for helping the gut. We don't always realize that the gut microbiome is probably one of the biggest things that we can improve to pull that diabetes lever. We think sugar, reducing sugar. We think things like that, but we forget about the low-hanging fruit that's just taking care of our gut. Now, I'll pop a link down below for something called Seed. Seed is a probiotic, but it's called a synbiotic, where it has prebiotic fibers and a probiotic in one capsule. I typically, candidly, hate probiotics. I don't like most of them because I think a lot of them are a marketing sham. But Seed is pretty interesting, okay? They put a lot of their own money and a lot of their own focus into their own microbiome research, paving the way for a lot of like mental health studies with the microbiome. Really cool stuff. So if you want to give them a shot, it's really cool technology. They have a capsule inside of a capsule. That link is down below. Again, that saves you 15% off through Seed. So they have a couple of different things. They have like a kids probiotic you can try, which is very, very interesting, but their main flagship is that synbiotic. And that's something that I take, especially when I'm traveling, and I think I'm gonna be changing my diet. But I've noticed a pretty big impact in terms of my blood glucose and how things are stable since using it. So I definitely recommend, because people don't think about it like that. They think, oh, gut health. They don't think blood sugar modulation as well. So that link down below in the description. Some interesting stuff when you look at agave. Okay, the confusing thing with agave, if you do a quick search on Google, you're going to find that a lot of people rain on the agave parade because they say, okay, well, agave has been so adulterated that it's actually just as bad as like maple syrup or really sugary. Agave is different. The reason that agave is interesting is it actually does not spike your glucose all that high. If it's organic, good agave, it's predominantly fructose. Now, I did some videos on this because it's confusing when you look at fruit. Fruit is high in sugar. Fruit is high in fructose. If you do a quick search about fructose, you're going to find a lot of YouTubers and people like that telling you that fructose is bad because it contributes to a fatty liver and things like that. If I can get sciencey for you on 1 second, it has to do with an enzyme on our body that's called fructokinase C. Okay, fructokinase C is involved in the metabolism of fructose. Now, when this happens, it depletes, when this metabolism happens, it depletes your levels of liver ATP, which means that your liver becomes capable of storing extra energy and you get a fatty liver. However, this only really seems to apply with high fructose corn syrup in copious amounts, high concentrations of fructose. When people consume fruit or moderate amounts of things like agave, doesn't seem to happen, okay? So I don't want you being freaked out by that. This is definitely going to be a better alternative than table sugar because the fructose content is high and fructose does not spike insulin, okay? Believe it or not. The sugar that's in fruit, fructose, does not spike insulin. So you'd be okay with something like this. And then people ask the question about honey. I think if you get good local organic honey, you don't need to get it from Costco specifically. I think in moderation, you're fine, okay? But again, you have to test it out. I think it's better than table sugar, that's for sure. This looks like a new item. This brand makes killer salsa, like really good salsa. I'm bummed out that they have some cornstarch in it, but other than that, it's actually really good ingredients. And like, I love to make some like low carb enchiladas and tamales and stuff, so I'm gonna grab some of this. Maybe not like the best thing just because of the cornstarch in there, but still, look, we're talking 2 tablespoons with 1 gram of, or 3 grams of carbs, 1 of which is fiber. Pretty negligible. Artichokes, again, you have what's called very long chain inulin in them. It's a specific type of fiber that's very, very good when it comes down to insulin resistance and diabetes. Downside here, these are swimming in canola oil, so I always give them a bath. I've got plenty at home, but rinse them off. Don't consume that oil. It's too caloric too. Okay, we've got all kinds of different cereals, oatmeals, you name it there, right? And if you look at most stuff, like when you, like oatmeals are supposed to be good for blood sugar, this Catalina Crunch stuff, although kind of pricey, I'm a big fan of the ingredients from a keto perspective. Like they market it as a keto cereal. I will tell you, I get knocked out of ketosis when I'm using this, but that's not really for this video. If you're diabetic, my father-in-law, right, really watches his blood glucose phenomenally. This has become a staple for him. And when you look at high oleic sunflower oil, I just want to talk about that for 1 second. People think sunflower oil, okay, once again, this whole seed oil demonization thing, I understand it, but the high oleic sun oil, that's where they're concentrating what's called oleic acid out of the sunflower oil. Okay, oleic acid converts into something called OEA. OEA within our body can help the conversion of white fat into brown fat. It can help thermogenesis, help increase your core body temperature. So with the concentrated oleic component, although in a sense processed because they're taking oil and refining it, it's a good oil. So I'm not upset about seeing that. Plus it's pretty far down the list. Now, pea protein, potato fiber, non-GMO corn fiber, I mean, yes, you can see why this would kick you out of keto, right? 9 grams of fiber, still 5 grams of carbs in a half a cup. So you overdo that, yeah, you're gonna have a problem. But like my kids love this stuff, just to have them on occasion, just a little treat. You know, if you had to compare this to say this for cereal, let's look at calories for a second. You still have to remember calories. Okay, half a cup, 110 calories. Third of a cup, 190 calories. So you might look at this and say, okay, look at that. We've got sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, a great ingredient profile, but at the end of the day, you also need to be looking at the basics. Okay. So in this particular case, although this might be a cleaner item, I like the fact that this does not have any weird stuff like erythritol in it, so you don't get as much of that kind of like artificial bloating feeling. But this stuff, we've got erythritol, and then we've got just a bunch of high calorie stuff. So you just got to be cognizant there. Just a general education on coffee for just a second. If you look at the preliminary stuff, you're going to see, oh, coffee increases insulin resistance. Not quite, okay? Now, what can happen is coffee can increase your blood glucose initially because it can help liberate glucose that is stored up in your muscles into the bloodstream. That's part of how it creates energy. Okay, it creates energy in multiple different ways. It binds to an adenosine receptor, which creates energy, makes you feel more awake, but it also liberates the glucose from your bloodstream for a little bit. So your glucose might spike, but that does not mean it's going to contribute to insulin resistance, okay? Coffee can actually be very good for insulin sensitivity because the polyphenols that are in coffee are actually really good for it. So don't be afraid of coffee just because someone on the internet told you that it's bad for insulin resistance. Ooh, this is a good deal on this Oikos 000. Let me tell you about this stuff. Some players are going to tell you that the natural flavors are a big problem, okay? And I stand behind some of that, but take a look at this. So we got non-fat yogurt, which I am a big fan of because non-fat yogurt, way less calories, okay? Then we've got milk, water, normal, okay, right? Contains less than 1% of natural flavors, tapioca starch, vegetable juice concentrate, stevia leaf extract, so it's sweetened with stevia, lemon juice concentrate, sea salt, vitamin D3. They're even fortifying it with D3, which is kind of cool because a lot of us are deficient in it. I don't like adding synthetic D3 if we don't need to, but it's a good, thoughtful nod to that whole issue. So the only thing in question here is natural flavors. And I just have a hard time getting upset with a brand for using natural flavors when we don't know what natural flavors they're using. If someone grinds up a strawberry and extracts the flavor from it, that's going to be considered a natural flavor. But if someone also creates some synthetic BS, that's also a natural flavor. You can't really classify exactly what it is. So I think these are great. I think like for the bang for the buck and the flavor for the buck that you get, 90 calories, 15 grams of protein. I've talked a lot about the gut microbiome. I've talked a lot of other things, but outside of like impacting your gut, directly consuming protein, that's the best way to immediately control your glucose. Microbiome stuff, a little bit more long-term chronic fix, whereas the protein side, immediate impact, okay? If you ate some sugar by itself, you'd spike like this. If you ate some sugar with this yogurt, you'd spike like this, okay? So this is great stuff. Definitely getting some of this, plus the price was phenomenal. What was it, like $7? $8? Yeah. Okay, it's just kind of funny because you compare it to something like this. This like Activia plays the gut health card like crazy. Gut health, we're all about gut health. Look at us. And then we have reduced fat milk. Second friggin' ingredient is cane sugar. These guys should go to jail. Like that is like messed up. Like if you look at the evidence, like sugar is not exactly great for your gut. Okay, so what? I don't know. It sure does support gut health. That's right. It's like whatever. It just irritates me. Another great one. In fact, I'm going to get one of these too. Great deal on this. And this is a non-fat yogurt once again. Okay, because again, when you look at diabetes in general, it's not just that you overconsume sugar. Okay, it is what's called overnutrition in general. When so much nutrition is coming in at one particular point in time, that the liver starts to store hepatic triglycerides, stores triglycerides. So I hate sounding cliche, but we still need to think about calories all the time. And this is a very lower calorie, very high protein option. 18 grams of protein in 2/3 of a cup. And we're talking 100 calories. So that's a great ratio of protein to calories. Okay, definitely gonna grab some of these organic frozen blueberries. Blueberries, probably one of the lowest carb fruits outside of like strawberries, maybe raspberries. But the anthocyanins, okay, this is an antioxidant flavonoid that is in blueberries. clinically demonstrated to really help out with cognitive function. So your brain feels really good. The other thing is very potent antioxidant in the first place. So when we're talking about reactive oxygen species and kind of helping the cell signal or receive that signal from insulin better, one of the better fruits that you can find. Now, I was hoping they had the wild blueberries, which I don't see right now. The difference between the wild blueberries, obviously they're much smaller, but even though these are organic, I like to, it seems like fruits are being bred to be more sugary, which is why they taste different than they probably did 30 years ago. But anyhow, organic will just have to do for now. Ooh, this is nice. Check this out. We've got like a fire roasted primavera. Nice. Mix of broccoli, yellow, green Italian squash, red bell peppers, red onions tossed in heart-healthy avocado oil. Yeah, zucchini, yellow squash, red onions, broccoli, avocado oil. Okay, so this is great. The fact they're using avocado oil, that means that you could cook this high heat. So you could even put it in an air fryer and you'd be totally fine. So it's really a great combination there. I love that it's got the broccoli, so you got good levels of what's called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane, super good for what's called glutathione. Basically, the liver produces glutathione, and that's an antioxidant. We have to remember we got to take care of the liver, because the liver is what receives this signal from the glucose in the bloodstream. So you eat some carbohydrates, the liver recognizes the carbs in the bloodstream first, then it reports to the pancreas, who then releases insulin. So liver needs to be on the forefront of your mind when you're thinking about just taking care of your body. Now, macadamia nuts, caloric nut, but really are like the lowest carb nut that you're going to find. You've got like Sacha Inchi seeds, which are technically a seed. They're a little bit lower carb. And you've got peely nuts, but they are a little bit different because they're just so obscure. So macadamia nuts are going to be probably the best nut for insulin resistance and diabetes. And I go on record saying that. I can't say officially they are the official best nut, but in my opinion they are. Okay, very interesting research demonstrated that when you took all kinds of different fats and combined them with high glucose. So let's say you were diabetic, you have high blood sugar, and then you consume some fats. That combination of high blood sugar and fats would trigger something called beta cell, insulin beta cell apoptosis. Beta cells are the cells that produce insulin. And when they go through apoptosis, it means they prematurely die. So you're killing pancreatic beta cells when you combine high fats with your high blood sugar. The only fats that did not do that were what are called omega-7s and omega-9s. Those are specific monounsaturated fats that happen to be in macadamia nuts. Okay, so very interesting stuff. Again, they're caloric, so just do a small amount. I recommend like 1 to 2 ounces per day. Works out terrifically. Okay, most of these jerkies are a little bit of a trick, because even though you're getting a good amount of protein, which we talked about being great, 7 grams of protein, but 9 grams of added sugar. All right, come on, not gonna fly. We got same kind of thing here, 7 grams, 6 grams of sugar. Larissa's Kitchen ends up being in the same ballpark. Hands down, these are the best. Okay, check this out. Grass-fed and grass-finished beef. I like that they clarify that. Water, sea salt, encapsulated lactic acid. That's just like cultured celery powder. That's just to kind of like keep it fresh. Okay, and part of the fermentation too. Black pepper, red pepper, garlic powder, coriander, stuffed in beef collagen casing. So it's actually using real beef collagen as the casing, not using like a weird vegetable or kind of weird blend that they sometimes do for the casing. So out of all the jerkies here, out of all the meats here, all of them are loaded with sugar. This is going to be the only one that's really practical. My wife said we needed some butter. I love this grass-fed butter. It's great, but look at the price between Kerrygold and this. And this stuff is probably just as good, if not better. Big fan of this stuff. Again, interesting thing with butter is, I think most of us, no longer rain on the butter parade. There might be a few people out there still. It's not like you want to overdo it, but a small amount of butter in the morning is actually quite great. Mix a little bit in your coffee, keeps you satiated throughout the day. Big fan of this stuff. And then, talked about the eggs before, these organic pasture raised, that's exactly what you're looking for, okay? So you've got the cage free, which means nothing these days. You've got these organic pasture raised. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that gonna affect my cholesterol? Like I already have diabetes, I already have metabolic syndrome. Like I need to be watching my lipids as well. And yes, you do. The interesting thing is, 1/3 of the fats in good quality eggs are monounsaturated fats. The same kind of fats that we found in the macadamia nuts, the same kind of fats that we're talking about in olive oil. 1/3 of the fats in here are monounsaturated fats, which are great for your HDL cholesterol. Now, another thing, studies have demonstrated that when you consume more dietary cholesterol, your body produces less cholesterol. What that means is that everything comes out in a balance, okay? So you have dietary cholesterol that comes in through the food that you eat, and then you have cholesterol that your body produces. And it's a yin and yang, and they always balance each other out. So don't be freaked out about dietary cholesterol. Okay, now, I'm not a big milk guy. My kids still have milk from time to time. Whenever I possibly can, I go for raw milk. I get in trouble for talking about raw milk on YouTube because some states it's literally illegal. Fortunately, where I live, raw milk is not illegal. Raw milk is the way to go. Okay, I really think that you retain the bioactive components of raw milk that really make it good. Raw milk, raw cream. I drink personally a ton of goat milk, raw goat cream. But Costco does have a really cool thing. Okay, they have A2, which is a specific kind of protein. Normally, regular milk is going to be A1 and A2. This is pure A2 and organic, which means you have less of what are called beta caseinates, which can impact your metabolism and they can impact how hungry you are. So I love that they're at least jumping on. This may not be the best one. I do think that, again, going for raw milk is probably best, but just to showcase, like if you're gonna go with milk, that's probably the best bet. And it comes a big question, like do you get a bunch of nut milks that have high omega-6 profiles? Do you get that? Or do you go for the regular milk and you have a little bit of sugar in the regular milk? What I typically do if I'm gonna have milk, I don't want all that sugar, so I'll take like a cup of the milk and then I'll dilute it with maybe a half and half or a little bit of cream. That way I can kind of create a lower carb version of milk. I always get excited in this section because they change the stuff out here a lot, and a lot of times I find some very interesting things. Nothing that's blowing the doors off me right now. Whoa, ooh. What we got here, Kevin's? Something new? Okay, Kevin's has a Mongolian style beef stir fry. A soy-free Mongolian sauce. Lots of ingredients: cauliflower, carrot, broccoli, magnesium oxide, xanthan gum, grass-fed beef, sous vide, Mongolian sauce, coconut aminos, apple cider vinegar, coconut nectar, sesame oil. So if you're going to use a vegetable oil or nut oil, it's that one. Coconut sugar, dehydrated. You know what? Badass. I do like they have the monk fruit extract there. Again, the yeast extract. So we have 9 grams of sugar, but it's coming from the coconut sugar. So it's a little bit better. So if you're looking for like a dish that you just want to make, I think this is great. I think you're going to find a heck of a lot better than like a traditional teriyaki sauce or something like that. A little price. Whoa, that's very pricey. $17 for this? I think I can literally make this cheaper. That's the thing. 100% and also 100% grass fed. We don't know if it's grass finished. Okay, it's just grass fed. They could just feed the beef grass for a month of their life and call it grass fed. You may think, hey, he's a YouTube star. He can afford the $17 stir fry. Okay. No, that's expensive. Sorry, I still have common sense. I love it when they have this. Now, this is something I'll drop 17 bucks on because this is a little bit different. We got mussels, clams, shrimp, scallops, squid in a classic American sauce. Let's see what's in it. We got, where are we going here? Okay, mussels, you got haddock or cod, clams, shrimp, scallops, squid, American sausages, tomatoes, lobster, stock, diced tomatoes, white, does have canola oil. Dang it. But it's pretty low down the list. And a tiny bit of rice flour. The carbs are more than likely coming from the tomatoes. I'm a big fan. I love cioppino. I'm going to get some of this because I don't know if I can find cioppino much cleaner than this in a prepackaged form. And the nice thing is the mineral profile you get out of that shellfish, you can't beat it. Like some of the best ways to get zinc, magnesium in a whole food form is through shellfish. So definitely a good low carb type of food to have. Are we here to pick apart every ingredient, or are we here to get just healthy and lose some weight and get our diabetes under control? All right, so here we got these chicken breasts, water, potato starch, extra virgin olive oil, vinegar, salt, lemon juice, dextrose. The dextrose is not uncommon to see, dehydrated garlic, some natural flavors. 3 grams of carbohydrates and 2 skewers. So it's frustrating because chicken shouldn't have any carbohydrates, right? The carbohydrates are coming from the potato starch. But I like that they're using potato starch instead of rice. Okay, the grains tend to affect some people more than the others. Why? Could be something called prolamins. There's a number of different reasons we could pull, but some of them would be in and out of context and in vitro research that we can't necessarily justify in a human model. However, potato starch I don't like, but it's not the end of the world. And I'm gonna get these because I feel like in a world where my young kids are wanting things that are sweet, right? They hang out with their friends and their friends are eating Sour Patch Kids and stuff like that. I would much rather give them this. Let's be real. If my little 2-year-old daughter says, I want a chicken skewer over a Sour Patch Kid, and it has a little bit of potato starch, I'm not gonna be a monster and say, no, you're gonna starve. So I'm gonna get some of these. And shame on you if you really get that granular when you're trying to look at a big scale here. Sure, is it not perfect? Yes, it's not perfect, but come on, my jam. The literal best cheese on the planet from a health perspective and from a taste perspective, Pecorino Romano. Okay, it's been a while since I've talked about my beloved Pecorino Romano in a video. It's probably been a couple of years from my old keto videos, but I still think as far as cheese is concerned, it's about the best cheese that you can get. Okay, so it is a sheep milk cheese, not goat milk cheese, it's sheep milk. Okay, and if you've ever met a sheep, they're usually better than goats. So with this case, we have just an aged goat cheese. It's already gonna have better A2 protein. It's aged for, in this case, 9 months. So you're gonna get more microbially active. It's a little pricey, okay? It's $11.29 a pound, but you're gonna let this last a long time. This on some of these eggs with a little bit of that butter and a little bit of olive oil drizzled on top, oh man, that is like the perfect way. I have some grated stuff of this at home, so I don't wanna waste it because this literally will last you about a year. Okay, what is the one literal best food that you could be having for diabetes? Okay, some people are gonna make you think it's olive oil, some people are gonna make you think it's XYZ or it's fiber, it's chia seeds, this and that. I'm telling you, it's lean protein. It is lean protein. And why am I not saying fatty cuts of protein? I have no problem with fatty cuts of protein. But in a world where we're trying to look at research that really blankets everything, the leaner protein has practically nothing negative about it whatsoever. If I wanted to look at studies, I could find detrimental studies surrounding higher saturated fat meats. Does that mean it's the case? Who knows, right? You're gonna have people that are gonna shoot it down one way or the other. The fact is, unless you are vegan or vegetarian, a lean source of chicken, a lean source of fish, a lean source of beef, phenomenal when it comes down for protein, when it comes down for insulin sensitivity, when it comes down to muscle mass. One of the most important things that you can do for your diabetes, for insulin resistance, is to retain or build muscle mass. Okay, here's how it works. This protein is going to build muscle. Muscle acts as a giant garbage disposal for glucose. So when you consume carbs, if you have a little bit of muscle, it's not going anywhere. So the excess carbs in that case, store into the muscle in tiny amounts, and then the rest is going to spill over, store as fat, or go through what's called glycation, and they're going to glycate other things and glycate proteins in your bloodstream. If you have more muscle, you basically have a bigger sink for that glucose to go into. That's why it's literally called in a clinical term like a glucose sink. So we want to work on building muscle. We want to resistance train, we want to eat protein, and our diet should predominantly consist of protein, and everything else will fall into place. I've saved the best for last. Now here, what about organic chicken versus regular chicken? So we've got $3.49 per pound for this chicken breast, or you got $5.99. $5.99, and I'm talking like, I'm in Carson City, Nevada right now, and we're about 20 minutes from the California border, so we're paying California prices here. $5.99 is a dang good price for organic chicken breast, so definitely grabbing that. See if I can convince my wife to make something yummy. Interestingly enough, though, talking about beef, there was a study that just came out. I'll have to pull it and link it in the show notes, but demonstrating that they're looking at especially lean red meat, no negative correlation between red meat and a lot of these things that people point their fingers at. The issues tend to come when people consume copious amounts of higher fat cuts, which again, combining high fat with high sugar is not good. If someone is doing a very low carb diet and not having a lot of carbohydrates, you could make the argument that they could potentially have more in the way of those saturated fats without a problem. I'm on the fence, right? I'm gonna have Dr. Alan Flanagan come on the channel, who is one of the leading researchers in the world of saturated fat. He's very knowledgeable in that world, because that is a concern. I think we should be considering all of the research when we look at things, not just cherry picking. Here's something you may not have known about bell peppers. So specifically in red and orange bell peppers, the beta carotene in it has now been demonstrated to be effective for insulin resistance as well. So specifically the orange and the red. So if you like bell peppers, try to cook them, okay? You want to cook them because when they're raw, the phytic acid, they are pretty hard to break down, and the lectin content can be quite high. which Dr. Gundry will tell you lectins aren't that great. Again, up in the air, right? Mixed research. Anyway, the red and the orange ones, great. Beta carotene, high amounts of that can really help out. Now let's see what else we got here. We got fresh garlic. If you want something fruity to put in a salad, nitric oxide production can actually help out with insulin resistance as well. So nitric oxide is going to increase vasodilation. It's going to allow for what are called the endothelial cells to actually be healthier. Okay, when those cells are healthier, the artery can contract. You can actually get glucose to where it's going. Okay, so I want you to consider glucose being trapped for a minute when you don't have good blood flow. If you have better blood flow, that glucose is liberated and can move better. I know I got frozen, but I got to get some more. And then I don't know what it is, but Costco, for whatever reason, gets the pick of the litter when it comes to the raspberries. That is a freaking killer price on raspberries. And raspberries have an amylase inhibitor in them. They also have tannins. Tannins are going to make it so that starch breakdown is slower too. So if you're eating a high carb meal, consume this along with them, and it can actually slow the response of the glucose. You ever see people making fun of people on Instagram because they talk about the benefits of lemon water? Well, guess what? I'm one of those that gets made fun of. Lemons, just like apple cider vinegar, really, really good for glucose. Now, what they do is when you put a little bit of lemon in your water, like a half of a lemon, just squeeze it into your water, it does something on what's called salivary amylase. So what happens is it affects the saliva, okay? And therefore, when the saliva starts to break down the carbohydrates in your mouth, you're affecting that so that you're actually delivering a larger chunk of carbohydrates into your stomach. So the predigestion is affected negatively, which means you're left with a bigger chunk of carbohydrates for your gut to try to break down. Your gut cannot handle that. So in effect, by affecting salivary amylase in your saliva, you slow down carb digestion and actually absorb less of the carbs. So a little bit of lemon, great. I don't need this many though. Okay, there was an interesting study on asparagus seeds. So we know asparagus has inulin in it, which is great as a fiber, but the asparagus seeds, something as an antioxidant in the seeds, actually improved insulin signaling as well. Probably one of the top vegetables you can do for insulin resistance. And this organic price is actually really good. $3.99 a pound. It's quite good. All right. So a sweet potato is not the same as a regular potato. Okay. Yes, they're both, similar. They're both potatoes. But you look at like Japanese, you look at the Okinawans, they eat a copious amount of sweet potatoes, but they typically eat the purple sweet potatoes. The more purple, the more anthocyanins, also some more of the antioxidant profile. So yes, the more purple the sweet potato, the better. But in our case, in the Western states, or in the United States, we get regular sweet potatoes at most of our major stores. These are tremendous when it comes down to glucose. Now, the thing is if you were to consume a sweet potato and then consume a regular potato, your initial glucose spike would probably be similar. But when you start looking 2 hours post-prandial, 2 hours after a meal, your glucose comes down quite a bit better with the sweet potato than it does with something like this. But it's also interesting because what we're talking about mainly is the fiber content here. Okay, now the anthocyanins also have an impact too. If you're trying to migrate over your types of starches that you're using, go for the sweet potatoes. Now, if you're going to go with regular potatoes, I think regular potatoes are better than grains. I'd say about 8 out of 10 people that I talk to spike really high from rice, but don't spike high from a potato. Fun fact on a potato, when you bake a potato and you make it really hot, it becomes high glycemic, okay, because the starch molecules expand and they turn into individual glucose molecules that absorb very fast. So a hot potato spikes your glucose. A warm or cooler potato, not as much. So if you want to get really weird, you can actually heat your potatoes and then cool them, or heat them up, make mashed potatoes, and then cool the mashed potatoes down. If you ever had cold mashed potatoes, it's actually not that bad. I know I sound like a freak, but hey, you're talking about your health, right? We have to sacrifice some things. If I have to eat my potatoes somewhat cold to improve my glucose, I'm all about it, right? So just a little bit of a fun tip there. Blackberries, we fall into a very similar category as the blueberries, still rich in anthocyanins. Any kind of dark blue, blackish berry is going to have that anthocyanin content. Blackberries are starting to come up in price though. It's a little bit pricey for them, but always got to check blackberries because they get moldy super fast. I'm going to grab them though. Yeah. Oh, strawberries have gotten expensive. Strawberries are probably one of the lowest carb fruits that you could have. They're getting crazy expensive though. Yeah, it's starting to come out of season too, even for the non-organic ones. Yeah, I'm gonna get some. I'll eat them for sure. enjoy them while I can before they go out of season. But yeah, I mean, from a carb content perspective, like, I don't think it says anything on here, no. But I want to say that like a cup of strawberries is like 11 grams of carbs or less. It might even be like 8 to 11, ridiculously low carb. And with that, I think we have a pretty good mix of the kinds of things that you can eat. And what's interesting was when you look at it, it looks largely Mediterranean. I didn't get every single item that we could possibly get, but hopefully I pointed some stuff out and you learned a little bit along the way to make some decisions and hopefully make your life a little bit more fun, because being diagnosed with diabetes or prediabetes or insulin resistance does not need to be a death wish. It does not need to be this sentence where your life is over. You can enjoy foods, you just have to know how to time things, and you have to know how to enjoy the right foods. I'll see you tomorrow.